Hi there, this is Jimmy Roberts. When it comes to the game of golf, there is no place on earth like the metropolitan area. It's always been a special place for the game of golf and also for golf writing. Some of the most esteemed and accomplished journalists covering the game work here. Now, you'll get a chance to hear them right here on the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association podcast. Enjoy.
Evan Schiller of evanschillerphotography.com. Where do we find you these days? I know you're
Oh,
all over
wow.
the place, but where do we
Yeah.
find you right now at this minute?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Um, I am actually home in Connecticut. I got a little bit of a stretch here at home, which is kind of nice because I've been on the road essentially almost all of last year.
Hmm.
I get a couple breaks here and there, but yeah, I'm home and catching
Yeah.
up on editing, from shoots going all the way back to September. I'm editing all this stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like even though I may go on a trip and spend 3 days, there's at least 3 days of editing from all the
Wow.
shots. Yeah. I mean, actual time I do editing versus the actual time I do shooting
Right.
it's way more editing time than there is shooting time.
Right.
When I'm on a shoot, I mean, may go out in the morning, couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the afternoon. Yeah, there's other stuff, but editing is, it's
Yeah.
what I've been doing most of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sort of putting the final touches on anything, regardless of what it is always
Yes.
it's
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah,
painstakingly
you know,
slow, that process.
you know.
Exactly. Well, I just want, before we get to all that, tell me a little bit about, your early journey in the golf space, because I know you were a player. Tell me a little more and tell us a little bit more about your background in golf.
Yeah. Well, I grew up, well, until I was about 4 years old, we lived in the city in an apartment and we moved up to Westchester. And that's probably when I started playing golf. My dad played a lot of golf.
Hmm.
He was pretty good, maybe a 9 handicap at best. And he would take me to the range. He's the one who gave me my first lessons.
Hmm.
Actually, I remember taking lessons, going to the Westchester golf range with him in Greenberg. I think
Hmm.
100A or something like that. I think they've built homes on it now.
Oh,
But
really?
and then there was a guy that Joe, was a pro there named Joe. Forgot his last name. He was there forever. He gave me some lessons, and so that's how I got started playing. And then he would take me on some trips, and one thing led to another. I played junior golf, high school golf, amateur golf, played golf at University of Miami with Woody Austin,
Hmm.
Daniel Crosby, and Johnny Doppelt, who lives, in the area. I think he
Right.
lives in the city now,
Hmm.
who's a pretty accomplished player in the area. And then, when I got out of college, I didn't know what I was going to do. And my dad said, "Well, why don't you just keep playing golf?" And I never thought I was good enough.
Right.
So I went to the tour school. I sent in my application. I think it was like $1,500 to send him, and I went to the tour school. I didn't make it the first time, although I came close. And then I played mini tours in Florida, a bunch of those. I played all kinds of state opens. I actually qualified for a number of tour events. They have those Monday qualifiers. I
Hmm.
actually qualified for the Buick a couple times,
Hmm.
and continued playing. And I think it was, from 1987, 88 until I'd say 88, I think I was in South Africa, played the South African tour. And I was a little bit tired, I think, of playing. And I was like, what? I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall a little bit. Let me, when I go home, and just decide what I'm going to do. And I wasn't sure. I says, you know what? Maybe I can get a job at a club around here. So I said, I'm going to go to two places. I'm going to go to Quaker Ridge and Wingfoot. And if they don't have anything, I'm going to just continue playing what I was doing.
Hmm.
And so I walked into the pro shop at Quaker Ridge, and Rick Verschure was there, who I knew because he was in South Africa. I'd known him before, but I got to know him a little better in South Africa. And he had just gotten the head pro job because Jim McLean went to Sleepy Hollow. And, they actually called Rick when he was in South Africa and said, if you want the job, you got to get back here. So I went in and talked to him. And I remember him asking me a million questions about all kinds of stuff about the golf swing and this and that, and I had no clue. I was, well, yeah, okay, well, so he actually there was no position really, but he created one for me. I was going to be the guy who would be there, I'd go play with the members if they wanted to, or give an
Right,
occasional
right.
lesson. So, and they'd
Sure.
let me go play in tournaments, and I said, "This is perfect." So I did that um, for a summer, and I remember going back to South Africa the next winter, and all along the way, I had been taking some photos. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably several years before I was in playing the California Open.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the desert in the middle of the summer. It was August, and it was 120 degrees. And um, after the tournament was over, we played at Mission Hills Dinah Shore course. Somebody said, "Go play um, PGA West." This new course that just opened up down the road, and it
Right.
was. I mean, it was now it's all built up, but then it was. I mean, there was nothing out there.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend, actually Tom Patry, and I went and played there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking down the ninth hole, and there was this amazing scene in front of me. Um, it was, Pete Dye's little dog leg kind of curves around the lake at the railroad ties, had the raised fairway,
Mm-hmm.
and right behind the green was this mountain. And in there was a perfect reflection of the mountain in the water. And I looked at this and didn't have cell phones then,
Right.
and I didn't have a camera with me. So you could all I did was, kind of I was mesmerized by it.
Right.
I
Sure.
remember it very, and I said,
Sure.
all right, I got to get a camera. There was no cell phones then. So I
Mm-hmm.
went home and got a camera and started taking photos,
Right.
of my trips. And, when I worked at Quaker Ridge, I took some photos there. And then Tom Patry got the job at Westchester, director of instruction. He called me and said, "Would you be interested in coming over here?"
Mm-hmm.
We went and talked, and I said, "Yeah." So I went and worked over there, and I was still taking photos. And one thing led to another. It was one year during the Buick Classic. He said to me, "Why don't we put some photos in the pro shop and try and sell them?" And
Mm-hmm.
I laughed because I thought that was really funny. Like, who's going to buy these things?
Right.
We put a few in the pro shop, and it was during the Buick, and some people bought them.
Well,
And I mean, really, that's how it got started. It was just a hobby. I was doing it for fun. I never thought in
right.
a million years that it was going to lead to what it is now. I mean,
Sure.
I figured I'd continue in the golf business or maybe get out and do something else. And then this just kind of slowly started to develop over time.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought I was going to do this.
I'm just
Just
curious, do you still have some of those like original pictures from the beginnings? Like
somewhere. Yeah,
you do still have
somewhere.
them. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And in fact, yeah, somewhere in a box, I'm
Yeah.
sure maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what I would do when I would go on these trips, I would take pictures of my buddies, and it was just for fun, during
Yeah.
practice rounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would hang them on my wall. I mean, I make these little 8x10s, put them in these plastic frames that I got at the local art, plastic frames that cost $5 or whatever, and
Yeah. Yeah,
hang
yeah,
them on
yeah.
my wall.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had photos of golf courses and pennants from, like basketball and football and all that stuff,
Right, 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 right.
and my fish tank. And yeah, I probably have them somewhere. In fact, and you just gave me a great idea because my wife and I are working on a book. I was approached by a publisher in New York, Artisan Books and
Hmm.
Hachette Publishing. And we're doing a book with them on my photography. So you just
That,
gave me an idea that I should probably include some of those. Be
yeah,
kind of
yeah. I
interesting.
mean, that's you can certainly give me credit for that. That's fine. No, I just kid- no, but I mean,
I will.
I think it's an important part of your journey, right? Like,
Yeah.
to reflect on where it began,
Yes.
in those early, and I think people would appreciate sort of the older, the at this point it's almost nostalgia, but those old, retro looking pictures that now we can people use buy apps on their phone to recreate, right? And
I mean,
so
yeah, I mean, with AI now, you can create something,
right,
but
right,
I
but
mean,
a lot of times one of the filters for those apps, either whether it's on Instagram or wherever, is a sort of retro picture looking,
yeah,
filter. So it's kind of funny that it's definitely an important part of your journey. So that's it would be great to include that in the
Yeah, I
book.
mean, because when I was starting, I mean, there was no digital, and
Yeah,
I was shooting with, I mean, I remember I had this little Minolta camera that my mother either gave to me or got me, and it was negative film. You know, you get these strips of, it
yeah,
wasn't even like a slide or a positive, which I eventually started using,
right.
but it was negative film, and you take it to the lab down the street, and you would develop it.
Develop it. You had to
You know,
wait a
like, oh,
week.
this one's kind of good. Then make a bigger one, or
Yeah, I was just thinking like, well, I guess we'll get to the technology and all, but like at what point, I guess you've always looked at then, since it started as a hobby and it started as you know, with just you taking pictures of your friends golfing and stuff like that. At what point did you start paying attention to the architecture, to the landscape? When did you start thinking about composition and all like, obviously it was a slow grow, but when did these things and how did these things sort of evolve with your skill set?
yeah, it's interesting because, as things evolved, I started using ladders
Hmm.
and bucket trucks and lift. There was no drones,
Right.
which, those getting height helped with composition because standing on the ground, it's difficult to get, the composition that you like because, you stand on the ground and take a photo,
Hmm.
unless you're using kind of some kind of zoom, half your photo is going to be fairway or wherever you take it from. But getting
Sure.
a little height helps with the composition.
Yeah.
There was a friend of mine who was a photographer, and this is probably when I was first starting out. He said to me, he didn't give me a lot of advice, but he did say one time, he says, you as a photographer, you're responsible for everything in that frame. Make it interesting.
Right.
I always remember that. So
Right.
what it did is it made me pay attention to the entire frame more so than I was because lots of times if people look through a camera or phone, they look at the middle.
Yeah, and they look at their subject, right?
They look at the middle, but they don't look what's, in the right corner, upper right, upper left, and so that started getting me to think about composition. And then, of course, you take a photo and you look at it and wait a second, that's not what I saw. Well, yeah, because you're looking at something in real life, real life, which is
Hmm.
life size, and then you're
Hmm.
taking it and putting it on this little negative or, you
Right.
know, slide, which is this big. Unless you enlarge it to like, 15 feet wide or something. So
Sure.
there was a learning curve. It's like, okay, how do I make this scene look interesting? Because the way your eye sees, the way the camera sees is not the same as how your eye sees it.
Hmm.
It's you see in 3 dimensions or more,
Right.
and basically your camera is one dimension, maybe two, but one because it's a flat surface.
Sure. Sure.
So there was a learning curve with that. There was a lot of I would take a photo and go on and go, ugh.
Right. Right.
I don't like that. Didn't look like that. Why?
Right.
So not only composition, but exposure, both. So
Right.
it was a learning curve for that.
Yeah. Did you take did you start taking classes right away? Did you start reading more? Or was it all really just point, shoot, and, trial and error? Because obviously, you know, there wasn't any immediate feedback, like you said. So you're trying all this stuff, and then you have to wait a week, back then, or to 10 days or whatever it was, to people, young people listening to this or watching this are going to be like, I don't know what they're talking about, but you had to drop it off at a developer, and you had to wait a week for the pictures to get back.
Yeah.
So were you trying to learn about the craft of the machinery because you're trying to shrink the learning curve or speed the learning curve along, or were you just trial and error?
Both, because
Okay.
I never really took any formal classes. A lot of it was trial and error, and I
Hmm.
would read some stuff. There was I mean, it wasn't the internet like it is today, where you can
Right.
go find out anything or watch a video on YouTube. There wasn't any of that stuff. So you
Sure.
had to, read a book or talk to somebody or
Right.
so, but a lot of it, yeah, was trial and error and a lot of error.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And so I remember it being disappointing at times and frustrating because you'd be there in the presence of this amazing scene, and you're like, oh, this is so great. You're taking photos, and then you can look at the, you take it to the lab. Yeah, like you said, you got to wait a bunch of days, unless you had a 1 hour lab, which
Mm,
sometimes, and then you'd get it back and you look and you, oh
yeah.
man,
This is crap. I didn't get
how,
it.
how do you, yeah, this looks like nothing like it. There wasn't, there wasn't Photoshop. And there was some editing tools, but I mean, I
Right.
didn't know how to use them. It wasn't Photoshop or anything like
No,
that,
no, definitely
or
not.
Lightroom or any of these editing tools they have now.
Right, right. I guess conversely, you probably um, were surprised a couple many times, whereas now it's probably harder to be surprised. I guess where you're like, oh, that really came out awesome, but because now you see it, right? You
Yeah,
see it as it's happening. So on some levels, you don't get that sort of reveal anymore because it's all
Right.
happening in real time now.
exactly. I mean, you take a photo and you can see it in your camera, or if you're using a drone, you can see it in the screen, or
Hmm.
so there, yeah, there's less surprise. There's sometimes, since you're looking at a screen that's still small,
Right.
with the camera back is still small. So there, I mean, there's less surprise, but still there's sometimes surprise, like, oh, I didn't know that card was there. Or I didn't see that, whatever. But it's not a big deal. Not like, oh my God, this photo is horrible.
Right. Right.
So, and then, you can also, bracket photos, take them at different exposures and,
Hmm.
different angles. And so, the other thing this guy said that I'll never forget, and this was when I was shooting film.
Hmm.
And because he said, film is cheap, your time is not, which made complete sense to me because, you go on this shoot and you have one chance, maybe one chance to capture this scene or whatever it is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And he goes, you can't go back. I mean, not capture the same thing. So, I mean, I
Right.
remember when I was shooting film, I would travel with bags of film,
Right.
and they would come in these rolls, and
Yeah.
this was, slide film,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I'd be traveling all these lead bags and I would just be shooting, and, it was a pain in the butt getting on planes because I'd have these lead bags and the guy would look, what is this? I said, it's film. He goes, open it
Right.
up. And then I'd take the film out and be
Oh.
all these, I was shooting 2 1/4,
Right.
it's at a Hasselblad and I had a Mamiya. And I was shooting with those, and they would look at these rolls of 2 1/4. It was Velvia film, and they went, "What is?" They look at it and they go, "Well, open it up." I said, "No, I can't
Yeah. Right.
because I'll ruin the film. Can't."
Right.
So it was kind of a hassle
Yeah.
going to an airport, and
Right. Right.
Hawaii, especially Hawaii, that
Right.
was the worst. Because then they make you take them all out.
Well,
They
yeah.
got
They.
all this film, and you're laying it out on the counter. Like, I mean, I got 100 rolls or whatever it was.
Right. Right.
Anyway.
And, and they think you're what, smuggling some contraband
I don't know what they thought, but
and
they're wiping them all down and they're looking at them, and then he says, okay, well, I want to just put them in the tray and put them through the X-ray machine, and then I have to
oh.
ask them about the X-ray machine because if it's a certain type of X-ray machine, it could ruin the film. They go, no, no, it won't. I said, well, that's what the last guy said, and it did ruin it. So I had to like, no, I'm not going to ruin my film in that machine.
Right, right, right. Oh man. Well, take us through the process. So,
Mm,
I'm a golf course operator, and I want to take whether public, private doesn't matter, but I want to bring you in. At what point, where does the dialogue start? How does it, and what are is it? Do you interview them? I mean, what's the conversation like? Because I imagine they have a goal in mind, and you probably have a goal in mind. Do they often meet, and or is it totally different?
no, that's actually a great question. So usually the courses that I end up shooting will contact me somehow via, email or Instagram or
Hmm.
LinkedIn. They've seen my work or somebody's, um, uh, recommended me, or it's like sometimes I've gotten to know a number of the golf course architects pretty well, so oftentimes they'll, if people say, who should we have shoot this, and they'll
Hmm.
recommend me, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So usually they contact me, and then we'll have a conversation. I'll send them a rate sheet, and then we'll usually have a conversation, whether it's like this on Zoom or a phone call. And I just like to find out, what exactly they're looking for, what exactly the job entails, um, and how many days it might be, whether they want all 18 holes photographed, or just for me to come out a couple days and for a selection.
Hmm.
And I always, and it's usually a marketing person or a PR person, sometimes the head pro, or sometimes the superintendent will call me
Hmm.
to start the ball rolling. And I always like that the superintendent is in on these conversations, because lots of times, I shouldn't say lots of times, but sometimes the golf course will schedule these things and not tell the superintendent.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they spring it on him, and they don't necessarily like that.
No.
So so wait a second, once I get on property, they're going to be the most important person, and you can't just spring this on them because they may have maintenance things going on.
Sure. And they also know how to
So
prepare the golf course, so they
yes,
want it to look as
and they
good
may
as.
have some maintenance going on, like,
Right.
oh well, we why don't you come out on Monday? Because there's no outing, the course is closed. I went, yeah, that's great, but you got to understand, in the middle of the season, if there's one Monday where the golf course is closed, your superintendent might take advantage of that and want to get a lot of stuff done that he hasn't been able to get done the rest of the summer, because you've had outings every Monday and
Hmm.
there's play all the other days. So there's lots of stuff they can't get done that they're
Sure.
trying to get done. And all of a sudden you say, hey, this guy's coming to photograph the golf course.
Yeah.
So you got to let them know ahead of time.
Especially, and then especially back in the day, like you said, if you needed like some cherry picker, like that's you're not just slipping that into the onto the property.
No, yeah,
Right?
they have to go out and get it or rent it, and yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, less so now because I don't need one of those.
Right.
But yeah, so it usually starts, with them contacting me with a conversation. I'll send them a rate sheet. I let them know what's involved.
Hmm.
I find out what they want, and then we'll, pick a date or dates.
Hmm.
I also like to, let them know what's involved, because, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't know. Like, for instance, I was supposed to go down to Florida to do these shoots at the end of March, but they've had a horrible, like we have had up here, been really cold. I
Yes.
mean, they had heavy frost in South Florida.
Yes.
And so it's killed a lot of the plants, and the grass is just, I mean, Bermuda, most of the courses down there have some strain of Bermuda. It doesn't
Sure.
like really cold weather, especially heavy frost. So the courses don't look good.
Right.
And, I've had a couple postpone,
Hmm.
and, there was another course that I was supposed to do, and they didn't want to postpone. And, but the person who was the marketing person or membership didn't really know what was going on in the golf course. So
Right.
that's why I went straight to the superintendent and asked him.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I would imagine, especially when you're dealing with commerce, right? I mean, then they have to understand that it may not look like what you think what you intend to be, and you can't be held responsible for that if they've just been dealing with, a couple of days of heavy frost, like you said, and the plant itself are all basically, well, imploding is really what happens
Yeah.
when so
Well, a couple, some of the stuff dies,
yeah,
the grass is off color. I mean,
yeah.
I was in Florida in January, and they hadn't had this cold snap. It was cooler,
Hmm.
and the grass was already kind of off color.
Right,
One of the
right.
superintendents said, I can't believe they had you here now, because this is not primo time, but they had to get it done. So
Yeah, yeah.
anyway,
I
um,
mean, thank God for some photo editing.
yeah, yeah.
Lightroom can help you, but it can't bring
And then,
dead plants alive.
you had a couple of warm days, and they dumped some iron on the golf course, which
Yeah,
made it look, like they went out, just sprayed some iron on it so it looks, also it
Yeah,
perks up.
exactly. You gave him a little booster shot.
Yeah, looser. Yeah, exactly. Booster shot. So
Uh,
yeah, that's kind of how it works. And then, I'll go do the shoot. I'm always in close communication with the superintendent
hmm
before and especially during, because we need to coordinate while I'm there, especially in the morning, because
Sure.
they're out doing their thing.
Right.
But also I am too. And so, I don't want to go out there and there's a hole I want to shoot. Meanwhile, all the maintenance people have driven all over it, and there's
Sure.
kart tracks in the do. But
Right.
they got to get ready for golf, so we got to coordinate.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a carefully orchestrated event,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a
for
lot
sure.
of back and forth, and I do the shoot. I come back, I edit it. I haven't now I'm starting to have somebody else help me with the editing, and then
hmm
I'll send the photos back to them, and they use them for their marketing, website, social media. You know,
I imagine that each golf course is different, obviously, but like, you know, talk a little bit about, when you're evaluating a golf course or a new golf course or, a new job, let's just say it may not be a new golf course, but a new job. What are some of the things that you mentally go through the mental checklist?
Mm.
Is it course you've been to? Is it the architecture stand out? Is it like what sort of goes through your mind when as jobs come in and you either recognize or don't recognize or know of a golf course in terms of when you start to mentally plan for a job?
Yeah. Well, I don't take all jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I actually I've turned away a number of them already for this year.
Mm-hmm.
For one, I don't have time, and the other, I remember having a conversation with Andrew Green, our
Yeah.
golf course architect, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I called him and I said, I gotta ask you a question. He goes, I'm sure you can't take on every job at this point that's being requested of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of these guys, Johannes, Stoke, Core Crenshaw. I'm sure for all these guys, they can't take on everything.
No, yeah. Yeah.
I said, so how do you decide, which ones you take on? And he said something was interesting, and I always take this into account. He goes, listen, if I'm not willing to get up at, 4 o'clock in the morning, fly across the country, get up every morning early, go out there, be out there most of the day, and work with people I really want to work with, I don't do it.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes to me, let's say there's a course that they want me to shoot, um, and I'm not that familiar with it, um, I'll ask them if they. Lots of times I'll already know, but I'll ask them like, has it been renovated recently or restored, and who did it? Because there's certain architects, if they restored it, I'm interested to shoot it. There's certain architects that I really like shooting
Mm-hmm.
their work.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, last year or was a year and a half ago, Riviera called me to shoot because they got a bunch of events coming up there. I think
Sure.
US Open, the Olympics, and then was like, yeah,
Mm,
you don't ask questions. That yeah, oh yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm in. And
100%.
this summer, I'm going to shoot Aaron Hills, and that was a yes. And
Mm-hmm.
there's Hudson National called me, yes, yes. There's certain ones that are a yes, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's others where it's maybe, and then there's a few I turned down because like first I didn't have time.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense to anybody, you just can't do everything. You can't do
Yeah.
every job, and then
No.
like what I'm doing now, I'm just inundated with editing and catching up. So.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a couple of different angles I come from to look at, with a job, like, okay, what course is it? Who designed it? Where
Mm-hmm.
is it? What do they want done? Um, yeah,
How does the architect shape your plan for the shop?
for the shoot
For the shoot,
or
yes.
oh, there's certain architects whose work I really like or who, I've done a bunch of work for and that they recommend to me, quite often. That if they say, hey, these people want you to come shoot, I'll say yes. Like I've done, a bunch of work for Jason, Jason Straka and Dana Fry,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they just did a golf course in Florida. It's Mayaka, which is amazing. I mean, it's in the middle of Florida. I mean, that was like, yes,
Oh,
yes, doing it.
yeah.
Um,
Automatic, yes.
yeah, and I don't know if you Tyler Ray, who's an up and
Yeah,
coming. Yeah,
yeah.
I love his work.
You know,
So,
he did a job on Long Island. Did a
oh
little
yeah,
that little part three, little executive course kind of. Well, actually, it's not an executive course. It used to be an executive course.
yes.
Spy Ring.
Yes, he had
Yeah.
actually called me to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't do it in
Yeah,
the time
yeah.
frame. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I love the work that he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He did a course, doing a course now, or I think it's close to complete in in South Carolina called Old Sawmill.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm going to go shoot that in September,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a I mean, it looks like, I mean, he just finished it, but it looks like it was built 100 years ago. I mean, it's this
Wow.
old school design. So, you know, usually old school, I love old school designs, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Rainer McDonald, Donald Ross, I mean, yeah, Alistair McKenzie, you
Mm-hmm.
know, shot Pasatiempo last year, and that was, a no-brainer.
Right.
So, yeah.
But that type of architecture, does that inform how you approach your shoot? Like, because like it might be the bunkering or the routing, or
Yeah.
how does that play into your plan?
Well, it's I always try to keep in mind, what the architect had in mind. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what's the best way to show this hole, right? From what angle?
Right.
And, it doesn't, even though I use a drone a lot, doesn't necessarily have to be high because sometimes, when you go up too high with the
Everything
drone,
flattens
it's
out again.
interesting, but everything flattens out and you don't get a
Yeah.
sense of, maybe elevation changes.
Right.
Um, you know, Unless you get something really early that's with the shadows and then it could show it. Like, I was in Ireland in September, last September, and I went to I went to a bunch of places. We went to Cairn, and Enniscrone, and the dunes there are just massive.
Wow.
And, yeah, you could shoot them from high and you can see, the shadows, but you don't get a sense of how big these things are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so, you're actually taking a photo with my drone. The dunes are, I mean, 80, 100 feet high in some places. So,
Wow.
if the drone's hovering 20 feet off the ground, you get a sense of how high these dunes are. And,
Right.
and also the light plays into it a lot, the shadows, you got to get it at the right time with your shadows to accentuate the attributes of the golf course. It could
Right.
be bunkering, it could be the dunes, it's just I think also kind of understanding and knowing the architect helps as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know if I shoot like a Rainer McDonald course and even Donald Ross, there's usually some interesting bunkering behind the green.
Right.
Not
Right.
always, but there usually is. So
Yeah.
shooting sometimes from behind the green can be really, really interesting. It just kind of depends.
Right. It's just interesting to me in the sense that there's so many, it's like an endless, you know, computation of possibilities to when you show up at a golf course. Like you could almost drown in trying to figure out, am I going for scale? Am I going for detail? Am I going for strategy? Am I going for the bunkering? Like I just feel like it's so, or am I going for emotion? Like how do you narrow it down? I'm assuming the owner or the operator or the marketer is helping you do that maybe with their goal, but it just seems like there are endless possibilities when you get on property. I can imagine if you don't have a succinct plan going in, you could waste a lot of time trying to make
Yeah.
all those computations.
Yeah. I mean, I know when I'm out there shooting, I'm literally not trying to figure that stuff out. I'm
Right.
just out there shooting. But that being said, with every course I shoot, if I don't get a chance to play it, I'll always drive around and scout it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'll stand in a fairway or behind a green, and I'll say, and I have this Sunseeker app, which essentially, shows me where the sun's going to be,
Oh, that's cool.
every time of the day, so I know, okay, sunrise is at, whatever, 6:30.
Right.
Okay. But it's not going to come over those trees until, close to 7.
Right.
Okay. So where do I want to be first? And yeah,
Right.
some of it's an educated guess, especially if I've never been there in the morning.
Sure.
So I get a guess as to where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm scouting around, I'm making little notes on the scorecard. I have all these scorecards from all these different courses
Sure.
and
Oh,
all
I can.
my little notes on them,
Yeah.
and like I'll write and where you would write the players' names, I'll write AM, PM, and I'll write the time that I think I want to shoot it with AM and PM, and then
Mm-hmm.
down below that I'll write pin.
Right.
So if I want a pin in a certain location, because I got to tell the superintendent that,
Right.
whether I want it, in the back right for the morning or, whatever. So I write down all this
Sure.
information so I know I've got an idea. And so I have, yeah, from a planning standpoint, I do have a plan going out
Mm-hmm.
there, and I
Sure.
have this sense of what holes I want to shoot and where I want to shoot them from. About,
Mm-hmm.
but that's all subject to change once you get out there and you see, oh, okay, well, this I got to come back a little bit later for this one. Let me go over to that hole. So when I go out there in the morning, I'll usually have a handful of holes. It's not like I'm trying to shoot the whole course in like one morning. I may have five holes or so that I want to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, I got to get these in the up ideal light.
Right. Right.
And usually, depending on the layout of course, um, it will also dictate where I go. Because some courses, the way they're set up, the back nine's on one side, the front nine's on the other. So I don't try to go back and forth. I'll say, okay, I'm going to stay on the front nine this morning and maybe these holes,
Mm-hmm.
and then go to the back nine to the next morning. And that's where coordinate with the superintendent comes in hand because, if they can, I ask them, hey, can I go on the back nine, Monday morning or whatever? And then can I go on the front nine Tuesday morning? And maybe you guys start on the back nine and
Right.
golf will start on the back nine. That way I would have the whole front nine. So
Right.
there's a lot of, the scouting really helps with the planning.
Sure. What's the longest shoot you've ever been on? How many days?
Wow. At one course,
Yeah, at one course.
uh, well, actually, there was one I just had in Florida, and it wasn't because it was scheduled, just because of the weather, and I just
Mm-hmm.
happened to have the time. I mean, it was supposed to be. They wanted me to shoot all 18 holes, which takes 3 or 4 days, and it turned
Mm-hmm.
into 6 because of the weather, and I
Okay.
just had to hang around. I mean, luckily, I always leave a day or so, but that was a long time to be at one course, 6 days.
Sure.
But it was partly because of the weather.
Right.
A lot of overcast mornings, and there was some rain one day, and um, yeah, that's usually it's depending, it's anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and if there's multiple courses, it could be longer.
Sure. Well, yeah, I was just kind of curious if, if you've ever been stuck at a golf course like you just said,
Yeah,
where,
sometimes.
that stuff's got to happen. I mean, weather is not completely predictable as we've come to know.
Yeah, that's why I always, even if it's say they want 2 days, right? I'll always leave an extra day or two, especially if I got to travel, cushion, just in case,
Right.
whatever, because you
Right.
don't want to fly somewhere. And because people ask me that, well, what if the weather's crappy? I said, well, I always, leave a couple days just in case.
Right. What do you have a this is probably a little unfair and I'm not sure how we would narrow it down, but do you have a Mount Rushmore of golf courses that you love to shoot?
Mm.
And that, just and I don't know how you would narrow that down, but I'll just throw it out there and let you pick it apart as you will.
Ones that I have shot or would like to shoot, or either or.
Either or, either or.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
no, yeah, that's a good one. Um, I love going to well, I don't know if it's a golf course, but I love going to Ireland
Yeah.
and shooting,
Yep.
and as far as, shooting and they're just a visually beautiful,
Yeah.
um, Karn is amazing with the dunes.
Mm-hmm.
Old Head is,
Yep.
uh, Old Head is just I
Pretty
mean,
spectacular.
photography is spectacular. The
Yeah.
settings, I mean, you
I've
know,
been there, fortunately, and yeah, I agree with you. Ireland is there's a texture about that place that just vi is
yeah,
visually stunning.
it
It's
is, and this, I mean, they're all wonderful, but Karn and actually Enniskron too, up in the northwest there, are just
hmm
stunning with the topography.
right.
Um,
So we'll throw Ireland on one face, and you got the
okay, yeah,
rest of
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah. Trying to think of what else. You know what I love shooting is Riviera. I just think it's one of not only my favorite courses, but one of my favorite places to shoot.
hmm
The especially in the afternoon, well, the golf course, I don't know if you've been there, but the golf course is in this like canyon.
I've never been on property, but I know the area.
It's in this canyon
Yeah.
with beautiful eucalyptus trees, and they have the oh God, what's the other tree? The trees with the big leaves, and I'm spacing out on the
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you.
Um, and there's something about in the afternoon when the light, the sun sets and it's kind of sh shining up up that canyon. It's spectacular. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's like a is it like a glow almost?
yeah, it is. It's like, and sometimes you get, the little bit of a mist off the, because, it's not far from the ocean.
Sure, sure.
So you get a little bit of this kind of misty weather sometimes. And I mean, and then, there's something about the kikuyu grass. I don't know what it is in the, it's just,
Yeah.
it's very cool. The light, and then, the golf course is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
And then, you got also the backdrop, well, the hills around
hmm
it's got these massive houses, but they're not right on top of you. You see them, but they're not like right on top of you.
Right.
And then I mean, clubhouse that just sits on top of the hill, which is not down in the canyon,
Right,
which
right.
is, when yeah, some of the shots with the clubhouse and the light, it's just, I really like it there. And also, I would say Bandon Dunes.
Bandon Dunes. Okay,
It's,
cool.
yeah, well, it's in a way, it's similar to going to Ireland
hmm
because, that stretch, I think it's 5 miles that they have along the water there, just, you know,
Pretty special.
it's pretty special. And the
Yeah.
ever-changing weather, and yeah, it's very cool.
Is there a golf course you have yet to shoot that is number one on your list?
Yeah, I would like to go to Australia, New Zealand. I'd love to go to Tower Edie, Curry Cliffs, Cape
hmm
Kidnappers, some of those places, and then also some of the courses in the Sand Belt.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you want it like Royal Melbourne, you want to do all
Yeah,
those.
I
You
want to
want to
go see
do
a lot, some of those in the Sand Belt down there. So
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't been there to
No,
just
I haven't.
yeah.
It's
I mean, it doesn't sound like you have a lot of time for vacation, but
no.
out of th 360 days, how many days are you traveling?
Uh, I would say 225, somewhere in
All
there.
right. All right.
Two,
I was
yeah,
going to put the over under at
two,
200. That was
yeah,
going to
no,
be
I
my
was gonna
number.
say maybe 200, 225,
Right.
225. Yeah, something like that.
I don't want to I don't before we wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about the technology that
Mm,
you mentioned, and I just want to circle back on that. Talk a little bit about obviously you've gone from taking pictures, basically not a Polaroid, but pretty close to it, from back in the day, that I expect to see in your new book coming out, or when you
yeah, yeah.
eventually get that book done. Actually, you should have some pictures of the scorecards that you use too for
Well,
the
that we are gonna put that in there, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. But the editing now with Lightroom and the Adobe Suite and all that kind of stuff, for those who don't know, these are pretty remarkable photo editing applications that professionals use, and you can really manipulate photographs, probably way more than you think you can.
Yeah.
And so almost to the point where it don't even look natural anymore if if you didn't do a good job. You can make it look almost completely manufactured. But yeah, just talk a little bit about how that's helped you bring out these pictures and almost enhance your job in terms of how beautiful these places and your interpretation of them.
Yeah. Well, it's helped because, well, I remember when you would shoot, well, just when I started off shooting with film,
Hmm.
what you got on that piece of film never really looked like it looked like when you were there.
Sure.
Because the nature of the film, like
Right.
I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
I would shoot with Velvia and it was a very contrasty, saturated film.
Hmm.
So lots of times, the shadows would be blocked out, black with you'd lose detail or it'd be
Yeah.
so that was always tough. And then digital came along and which was a godsend because now, all right, I've got you, I shoot everything in RAW, which I mean, as a professional, most professionals do, I think you do, because um, for lack of a better way of saying it, it captures all the information that's, in the scene
Yeah.
versus if you shoot with a JPEG, it's compressed and so you lose a lot of information.
Hmm.
So even though when you take a shot with digital, it may not look the way it did when you were there, but that's part of the whole deal with shooting with RAW. Now, your job when you go to post production or editing is to bring out, to make it look like when you were there.
Right.
Because it never comes out of the camera looking exactly like you want it to do. And that's,
Sure.
I like to shoot things flat because that's how you maintain the most information.
Right.
And you want as much information as possible in the file. So
Sure.
then when you go to, edit in Lightroom or, Photoshop, whatever,
Right.
you can bring that, all the information is there. Like even if a shadow is dark, you can go in there and bring out the detail, which is still there,
Sure.
which is like with a JPEG, because it's compressed, you lose details and
That's already
shadow
gone. Yeah.
is gone. So,
Right.
um, so it's really helped from that standpoint
Hmm.
to, make images look the way you think they should look.
Sure.
And it also helps with, when I sell prints, I sell a bunch of prints via my website.
Hmm.
Um, and I print on different mediums, like canvas or metal or just on photo paper, or different types of photo paper.
Hmm.
Um, and the color gamut on each one of those, you know, print mediums is different. So
Okay.
I could take the same photo file that I have and print it on 3 or 4 different mediums, and it'll look different in each one.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
I make little adjustments to account for the different
Material.
um, material, yeah, which that without that, photo editing applications you can't do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I can adjust accordingly to whatever medium I'm going to be printing on.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
That's
so it
pretty
makes it a
interesting.
lot easier. I can, I know the color profiles for all these different, and for my way my, printer works. So,
Sure. And then you could also use those tools to, make some colors pop, or
oh yeah,
maybe you want to enhance the golden brown of the fescue to really frame the whole. And there's so many things that you can do. You could really draw the person's eye to anywhere you want on the golf on the
yeah,
in the picture.
I mean, whether it's, enhance the color here or the contrast or, well, this is a little dark over here. I want to make it a little lighter or, I'd like that flag over there to pop a little bit more, or
Yeah.
the sky looks a little bit too magenta, so I can take some of the color, because I
Yep.
mean, even when you take it with a camera, and each digital like camera is different, has a different color profile. So even though I
Sure.
may take the same scene, I could take it
Right.
with 10 different cameras, and you'll get 10 different versions. They all look different.
Sure.
So the
Sure.
color, is different.
Right. Interesting. You mentioned your website and it's Evan Schiller photography.com. Is there a frequent image that is that that sells the most? Do you keep track of
Yeah.
that's can you tell us what are some of the ones that
Yeah.
are the most requested?
So well, I sell more photos of the seventh hole at Pebble Beach than anything else by
Really?
far. Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well,
By
that's
far.
timely because we're recording this
Yeah,
during
I
the
know.
AT&T.
They're actually probably they're finished by now because they were starting early because of the weather coming in.
Right,
Yeah, the
right.
seventh hole, I sell more photos of the seventh hole. And there's a couple of images in particular of the seventh hole
Mm-hmm.
that I've taken that sell a lot.
Right.
It's one where it was right after a storm came through and there was, these dark clouds and these big waves. And so, it was
Pretty dramatic.
pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
So the seventh hole, and then there's a shot. The second most popular one, I would say, is there's
Wait, don't tell me it's the one at Inwood.
no, no, no,
Oh, okay. Because that
no.
one is pretty spectacular.
Yeah,
That
that was,
sky, that one on
oh
Inwood
my God.
that is amazing.
There's an
Okay.
interesting story behind that. And you saw
Okay.
the airplane. I
Yeah,
call
yeah,
it the
yeah.
airplane.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
We stood out there through a wicked thunderstorm.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I was out there shooting, and the storm was coming across. It's Jamaica Bay, I think, right?
Yep,
Right there.
yep.
Yeah. This thunderstorm, and the sky was dark. And I remember being out there with the superintendent and his assistant, and they go, "We better go in." And no, there was no drone. He had a lift, I mean, behind the tee,
Mm-hmm.
hooked up to the back of his pickup truck. And I said, and it was a good drive back to the clubhouse. And I said, the assistant wanted to go. He was getting nervous. And I said to the superintendent, who I forgot who it was at the time, I said, "Can we just stay out here in your truck?" And he looked at me like, "You sure?" I went, "Yeah, because if the storm passes and the sun comes out afterwards,
It's going to be
it's going
amazing.
to be amazing. And if we're in the clubhouse, by the time we get out here, we might
Yep.
miss it." And he's okay. I mean, it was coming down. I think there was even some hail.
Right.
And I remember we were watching the planes come in. There was one plane, it was getting so windy, it was going to land, and you could see the plane kind of going like that. He aborted the landing because the wind was so strong. So anyway, storm passed, sun came out, and I got those photos.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
no, anyway, to answer your
Yeah.
question, the second one is this shot I took of Bandon Dunes a few years back. It was of the fifth hole on Bandon Dunes, and it was just cold, misty morning. It was foggy, overcast, and I was waiting out there on the set on the fifth hole, just hoping, thinking, well, okay, I'm gonna go in for breakfast pretty soon because I mean, I had my rain suit on, and there was a little break in the clouds on the horizon. So I launched my drone. I just hovered it behind the tee, behind the fourth green, and sun came out for, I mean, I don't know, maybe a minute at most. Got off a few frames, and there was still some gorse and bloom on so that one. And
That's
then
awesome.
yeah, the photos of Old Head are also very popular.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's visually stunning
Yeah, it
place.
is. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a cool
yeah,
place.
yeah,
It's a cool place to see once for sure. No
yeah,
question
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
100%. So I'm not surprised there.
yeah. No,
Well,
yeah.
Evan, thank you so much for
Oh
joining us.
yeah.
It's Evan Schiller, evanschillerphotography.com, folks, for those of you listening and want to scope it out. Real pleasure to have you on. And
Oh God, yeah.
for those of you watching, actually, the introduction that we have on YouTube for all our podcasts, that's voiced over by Jimmy Roberts, is all those pictures are provided by Mr. Evan Schiller. So we thank him for that and for his contribution to the Metropolitan Golf Writers podcast in general. But really a pleasure to have you on.
Oh my God, yeah. Thank you so much. Been really looking forward to this.
Yeah, yeah, excellent stuff, and we look forward to seeing you around soon. Although probably only in an airport.
Yeah.
You have to come out to one of our events one of these days. You know.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
All right, Evan. Thank you so much for joining us,
Uh,
and be well.
okay, you too. Thanks.
Take care.